Thank you for joining today's Juice Show. Are you able to hear me okay, LaShawn?
Loud and crystal clear.
All right, perfect. It's good to see so many people's bright and shiny faces this morning. This is the Juice Show podcast. We're on season 2, episode 11, and we have a great one planned today. We have a special guest by the name of Randy Pertler out here in Frankfort, Illinois. He's a student, he's a father, man of God, real estate investor, has done multiple real estate deals, just a great guy to meet. And I just so happy and proud that I get the chance to introduce our special guest. Everybody give a warm Juice Show welcome to Randy Pertler.
Hey, James, thanks a lot. Thanks for the intro.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Juice Show. Welcome, Randy. Thank you for coming on, brother. We are so happy and excited for this topic, man. Pivoting through transitioning through real estate. Oh my God, this is going to be good. So I want to start out by asking you, what were you doing before you came to this community?
Yeah, so right out of college, I was a teacher and coach for 8 years in Lansing, Michigan, actually. I then went into educational publishing. And even when I was teaching and coaching, I actually bought my first couple real estate buy and holds were in Lansing, Michigan. And the first 3 were all owner financing. I was in my 20s, it's a long time ago. And then I kind of paused the real estate as I pursued educational publishing because that took me to Chicago with a job promotion and opportunity there. I was blessed to become the VP of sales of actually 3 different educational divisions of 3 different educational publishers throughout my career. But what I tell people is that even though those were some pretty good and profitable years, 3 times in my career, my position was eliminated. You know, you think when you climb the corporate ladder and you get to a status of, a VP of sales of an entire division for a major international publishing company, that's about as secure as your job gets. Well, that's not true. One time we were acquired by another company. They already had a VP of sales, so they didn't need 2 of them. Another time we merged with another division and my job was eliminated. In 2008, the company I worked for, major publisher, laid off 300 people, including myself, my staff, managers that reported to me. And, as Bob Tierney always says, job security is an oxymoron. And I saw that 3 times in my career. So that's what really kind of brought me to real estate full time. It's like, wow, even though I was making good money and had a lot of, benefits for those other positions, any day that could happen again. We could get bought out again. We could get downsized again. So that's what really brought me to real estate. So that's what I was doing. I had an education background, educational publishing, and sales background.
Nice. And so would you say that led you to, what was it that inspired you to look towards, I guess, the real estate side of it, or fixing and flipping, so to speak?
Yeah, so when I was still teaching and coaching, I kind of got the real estate bug way back then. And it was through probably the late night commercials. It was Carlton Sheets back then, was kind of the guru on TV. That really dates me. But I bought the Carlton Sheets program, and I can't remember. I think it was on cassette tapes or whatever. I don't even think there was any video on it. It was just cassette tapes. And that's what really got me interested. And I'd learned enough to know that this is one of the best wealth builders around. I mean, to be able to build not only financial wealth, but also wealth with your freedom, to be able to do something on your own schedule. Again, not have a job where someone could, eliminate that job at any time. So yeah, it really was through that exposure, I think, that gave me enough, even though I didn't learn everything from that. What I did learn is that this is one of the best vehicles on the planet to become independently wealthy.
Okay, and so besides the Carlton Sheets, were you looking at anything else like that it really inspires you to want to do real estate? Was it family members or friends? Anything going on around you in your environment?
No, not really. I actually was just kind of about the only one. There wasn't really any of my family or friends that were doing real estate. I just always knew it was there. And then, in 2008, like I said, when the downsizing happened, I fell back onto that. I started doing, I probably had done maybe 10 to 15 real estate deals, some flips, some buy and holds. And I was invited to a meeting in Downers Grove, and that was a real estate investor education and community. And I went there, not so much skeptical as much as maybe I don't need this because I'm already doing it. I've already had some successful flips and buy and holds. And does this really make sense to me to join this group? But I did go to a workshop, which like we had one just yesterday. I went to a workshop and it was a fix and flip instructor. And I remember sitting there taking notes and really paying attention, trying to learn something. And a lot of the stuff I was already doing, some of it maybe intuitively or through previous experience. But then there was just a few things that hit me, and I'm like, man, and I wanted to reevaluate the flip because I had just flipped a property like days ago. We had closed. And I remember going through kind of thinking, man, if I've done those things a little bit different, made different decisions, evaluating it differently. And one of the key things that I've learned and I've shared is if I had thought like an appraiser, and that's something, just one little thing that I learned and what that really means and how you do the flip up to the level, certain level to get the maximum price from an appraisal standpoint, not just necessarily, oh, it's going to increase value so high, I'm going to make so much more money, then find out it doesn't appraise. And then, you've got to come down on the price anyway, or pass on that particular buyer. So it was through that experience that I was like, hey, even though I'm doing pretty good, I don't want to just do good. I want to do great. I want to take my business from good to great. I don't want every flip I do wonder, could I made $5,000 to $10,000 more on that flip had I been better educated, better experienced, evaluated it differently. So that's what really got me involved in the community that you guys are involved in, and then the networking. I mean, that's just on the education side. On the community side, it's been unbelievably beneficial. Connect most of the deals that I've done over the last several years have been brought to me by a community member that maybe wasn't ready to do it themselves, or wanted to wholesale the deal, or wanted to be involved, and wanted a more experienced partner also involved in that deal. And then raising capital. It's not always the people in the community, but maybe a friend of a friend of a friend, bringing in other partners. So that's been really invaluable, those two things, both the education and the community.
Man, that's powerful. So, Randy, when I first met you, you were actually hosting some study groups for our community for the fix and flipping side. And you've done a number of flips. Is flips what you actually started real estate doing? Did you start off doing fix and flipping? And why, and if so, why did you choose that specific strategy?
Yeah. So, before I joined Renatus, I think I was kind of out there without a really strong business plan, and I think that's something that I've learned. It was kind of like, oh, there's a house. Oh, it's a good deal. I'll buy it. Does it make more sense to flip it or to buy and hold it? And of those first 10 to 15 real estate deals, it was a combination. Flips, I would say first 2 or 3 were flips, then the next 3 or 4 were buy and hold, then the next couple were flips. And what I would regret or change is that wasn't a plan. Now what we teach and talk to people about is looking at what are you most urgent, what's the most urgent thing to affect your balance sheet or your income statement? Do you need that income right now to live, or do you have income right now that pays your bills, and are you looking at more building equity long term affecting your balance sheet? So it was kind of haphazard, I would say, just based on, oh, there's a property and and I can get it for a good deal. And so I just went forward with it and then just figured out, is it best to flip or best to hold? And that's not something that I would do now and even recommend. Really to have a plan going forward, exactly what you're going to do. If you're going to flip, how many properties you're going to flip a year. If you're going to buy and hold, how many you're going to do those. And then really look at properties that fit that particular criteria. But I did start out, it was, I mean, I wish I could answer more clearly, but it really was kind of a combination of both flipping and buy and hold.
Okay,
Nice.
great.
No, that sounds great. Just from my experience, what I wanted to ask you, Randy, now when you decided to make that transition into real estate investing, was there any kind of kickback from friends or family members like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you getting into real estate? Or was there any kind of, negativity or asking questions, why are you doing this? And aren't you worried about your job and having that security, and why real estate?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, my situation was probably a little bit different than most people. I think what you're describing is probably the norm, where you get people if you're leaving a job. Mine wasn't so much at that time leaving a job because it was during one of those downsizing periods where my job was eliminated. But I do think there were some family members that, although they might not have verbalized it to me, they were probably thinking, like, you spent all this time and you've had this success in this industry of educational publishing, you know, why wouldn't you just go out and get another, position with another publishing company? Yeah, so I think there were some people wondering why I didn't jump right back into that. And I saw that as an opportunity when that job was eliminated to really restart, create my own future. And the other thing was with that position, with the VP of sales position, I was traveling all over the country. I mean, the last year I worked in educational sales on one airline, I had 50 round trip flights. When you think about it, that's once a week. So even though the income was very good, my kids weren't out of the house yet. I mean, I still had kids at home that I was raising. So being away that much was really draining on me, and was not a good situation. So real estate wasn't really the income. I was like, I didn't have to make more money than I was making. If I could just stay at home and be there for my kids all the time and make the same amount of money, I would have been happy. So I didn't really have that, but I can see your question. I bet a lot of people do face that. And the transition from a job or a career to real estate, maybe full-time real estate, it's never easy. That's an individual decision. And I would caution people about leaving a job or regular income too quickly, jumping into it, and then maybe making desperation decisions in real estate, having to do something right away, having to make the income right away. And I think people at Renatus, the education company, the leaders would agree with that. And I've heard them say that on a number of occasions.
Nice. Yeah, it's because I know a lot of the students, including myself, making that decision to go into real estate. They're like, what are you doing? How, you could just buy a house and fix it up and sell it. Why do you need education? Why do you figure that this is the best route for you to go? So I appreciate you answering that. And so that also leads me into being that you were also in the education system. So I believe that transition from you to already doing real estate to getting education, it was almost a no-brainer for you to get started into the education, being that that education is how important it is. And
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, like you say, even though I was doing it, I could see how I could improve. And the more education you have, the less risk it becomes. I mean, real estate, anything is a risky business. Whenever you're putting money into it, or someone else's money, even more importantly, somebody else's money, which is how I do my real estate, raising capital. When somebody else's money is at risk, all the more important for you to minimize. I mean, to me, it's irresponsible to do real estate with somebody else's money without all the education and training you could possibly, accumulate and absorb. I mean, that's irresponsible. I mean, if you don't go through real estate investor education and you raise capital, somebody else's money, and it doesn't go well and you lose money, I mean, I don't know how you sleep at night knowing that you know, kind of tried to circumvent the system. You tried to do a shortcut and other people paid for it with their money, or maybe losing on a particular job. Because you can, and listen, it's not flawless. I mean, you can still have education, training, and experience, and things can still come up, and you could still maybe not make money on a real estate deal. That's still possible, but it's less likely the more that you're trained and experienced. And what's great about, you know, our community is not only, again, the education, you can bounce ideas against other people and ask advice other people that have already done, you know, hundreds of flips. So that's really important. And when I decided to join the education, you know, there's a couple different levels that you can do. My mindset was perhaps different than other people's. Mine was, you know, some people think, because I've showed people, I had to attend meetings, and their mindset is, well, what's the least amount of money I can put into this? And what's the lowest thing I can do? You know, my mindset was just the opposite. My mindset, if I believe in this and I'm going to go after this, what is going to give me the best chance of being successful? That was my mindset. Mine wasn't, well, hey, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to try it out or whatever, but maybe don't do it at all. You know, I mean, when you make a decision to do it, ask yourself what gives you the best opportunity of success. You're not even giving yourself a fair shot at it. You know, if somebody just dips your toe in and tries it and then, oh, it didn't work out in a year, you didn't even give yourself a fair shot, right? Give yourself the best chance to succeed. And then if it doesn't work out, hey, you can hold your head up high, and I gave it a shot and I did my best, and I made decisions based on what will give me the best likelihood of success, not the other way around. Not, well, I just don't want to really risk much. And, you know, to me, you haven't really made a decision yet at that point.
Man, that was a great. You packed a lot into that. It sounds like when you were talking, you were saying, you are more like a fiduciary, someone who basically takes someone's money and you kind of feel like you're responsible for it. So I heard you say a lot about raising capital. Oscar, can you bring that slide up for us? We want to kind of get his classes that he talked about. When you talked about raising capital, I heard you say you were doing a number of flips at a certain point. And obviously, you know, you didn't have that money, I guess, sitting in the bank account somewhere to do these deals. So can you explain to us a little bit more on how that raising capital and how this class and what it meant to you, what, you know, had came about after you taken this class?
Yeah. And let me back up just to give you a little bit of context. So, you know, I had a pretty high paying job, got a pretty decent severance, had some money in my retirement account. So in those first, you know, 10 to 15 deals, most of it was my own capital, or at least a lot of it was. And I tell people, I really didn't become a true real estate investor until I ran out of my own capital, or my own capital was already in other properties. And that's really what because I'll tell people that, you know, if you're going to use your own capital, that's fine, but just know that you're limited then by your own resources. No matter how much money you have, if it's $1 million, well, you're limited to $1 million, or whatever $1 million plus a loan will get you, right? It's still a limit. Learning how to raise capital gives you limitless opportunities in real estate. Now it's just a matter of finding the deal, putting the deal together, and that's not a constraint. So learning how to raise capital, because I had done it a little bit before joining this group, and I went back and I'm like, you know what, I made some mistakes, things I should have done better, differently. But the class that you've got out there, the Matt Sorensen class, and I told people just on that, you know, workshop we did yesterday about raising capital through using property tours to help raise capital. In doing that, there's so many rules and regulations that you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. Now you might say, well, I know those people, I'm raising capital, they would never, you know, blow the whistle on me or call me out for doing it improperly. Yeah, that might be true until you lose their money. And then you might be finding yourself in front of a judge. So you have to make sure you do everything correct. There's a big difference between a partner and an investor and a lender. And that Matt Sorensen does a great job of explaining that. And because I have raised capital through private money lenders, so they're lenders, and also equity partners, and they're actually partners. And there's some regulations. You just can't put the label partner on them and adhere to the law. There's certain things that they have to be involved in that LLC, and rights that they have to truly fit them into the partner category. You don't want to be in the investor category unless it's a security, or in case of one of my new projects, like with crowdfunding, they actually are investors, but that's different. That's a different regulation, different law. So anyway, raising capital, it's very important to know how to do. Then any real estate deal is a possibility for you, and you're not limited by your own resources. And, I take other people's money a lot more serious than my own. If I have a sleepless night about a project, it's not my own project that I'm worried about. If it's my own money, it's if somebody else's money is involved. And that needs to be your mindset, to really serve those people. And when raising capital, you have to become good so that you can talk with confidence to people, prospective partners, that you're doing them a favor. If you have a mechanism, if you have a project that they can make 15%, you're a blessing to them. You're giving them the opportunity to earn 15% or whatever your project projection is. Or if it's a private money loan, maybe you're guaranteeing them 8%, 10%, 12%, whatever, that's written in the document. You are giving them an opportunity to make more money than what they would, with less risk than what they probably are doing right now in the stock market, or, any other investment that they may have. So that's so important to know what you're doing so that you can raise capital with a good conscience, that you are doing them a favor and you're giving somebody an opportunity to leverage your knowledge and experience to get better returns than what they currently can do.
Man, this is good. This is good. Y'all put y'all questions in the chat. I know that's generating some questions. So put your questions in the chat. We definitely gonna get to them. So Randy, I want to ask you lastly, when you said you're transitioning from flipping to luxury short-term rentals, in that transition, because we definitely got to get to this land development and condo development, but throughout that transition from flipping to luxury short-term rentals, what was it a deal that came your way that made you make that switch, or was it the education that you took a class and you said, you know what, this might be a better strategy, another way or another path that I can seek? What was it for you that made you went from flipping to luxury?
That is a great question, and kind of the title of this is Pivoting for Profits. Some people will go into real estate investing thinking, I'm just going to flip. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to learn how to flip, and I'm going to flip. That's good on paper. That sounds good. It's like Mike Tyson says it, everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth, right? And it's kind of the same thing. Everyone's got a plan, right? Oh, I'm just going to flip until they get hit in the mouth. What do I mean by that? Contractor walks off the job. The roof needs to be repaired, and you didn't know that it needed to be repaired. There's things that come up that all of a sudden flipping that property is no longer profitable. And that happens. Or it doesn't yield the profit. Even if it's profitable, it doesn't give the kind of returns that you need to get on it, or that your partners would expect to get on there. So when I've pivoted for profits, pivoted to luxury short-term rentals, they were really cases where it was a deal. Now, we had that education. Those classes were in our education. But at the time, it wasn't really a focus of mine. So I listened to them, I understood them, I got the concept. But what really brought them to a focus was when I was doing a flip, had some contractor issues. There were some other issues with the house. It was taking longer than what it should have taken. I got towards the end of that flip, and it was a very nice house. And I usually don't stage my flips, with furniture or whatever, but I had access to some pretty inexpensive furniture. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stage this house to sell it. Maybe I'll get a little bit more for the price, but it'll also allow me to short-term rent it as it's on the market. So I thought, you know what, that's a good strategy, because my idea was having it, quote, staged, furnished, might produce a higher price anyway. And even if I get an offer the first day, there's going to be maybe a month or two for the financing and the closing to go through, so I could generate some cash. Well, I put it on Airbnb or VRBO and some of the other platforms, and like instantly I got a booking. I'm like, wow, this is like, I don't even know if it was 24 hours, I got a booking like that weekend. And it's like, wow, this is incredible. It was a birthday party or whatever. So I'm generating income from day one, basically. And then come to find out, after the success of that, neighbors complained, and somebody from the village contacted me. And I had looked, by the way, I had looked at their codes. I knew, to do that. I looked at their codes. I can't remember if I called them as well. I may have. And they said, oh, we don't allow, they called it vacation rentals. And I said, well, it's not really vacation rental. The person came from the next city over and they're having a birthday party. No, we can't allow that. So anyway, long story short, I ended up selling that property, and I did the same thing with another property, and I short-term rented that. That was a luxury home with an indoor swimming pool, and that was successful right from the start, and sold that. But again, there was some pushback from the neighbors. So what that alerted me to is, man, there is a huge market for people that want to rent on Airbnb and VRBO and some of these other sites. But they want to have a large family get together. They want to have a party there. And one of the reasons why I think I knew there was a demand is there's so many, if you look at Airbnb and VRBO homes, everything, no parties allowed, no guests. The fact that they have to tell people no means people are asking them, can we, right? So that's when I pivoted with really my focus, and was going through starting to do these luxury short-term rentals. And I came up with a name of our website, which is bookofmemory.com. Here, I'll share my screen. I see you've given me the ability to do that. So you should see my screen. That's our website. I have two partners with this particular business. And so we intentionally go out, look for large homes. This one's 12,000. What's on the screen right now is 12,000 square feet. We have 3 outside of Chicago that we own, 1 outside of Indianapolis, 1 outside of Atlanta. We're looking at 10 other markets around the country. This one here is our first one. That's in a small town in northwest suburbs called that's on 7.5 acres. That one, the first year, we did $330,000 in rents, the very first year. You compare that as a regular rental, that would have been maybe $4,000 a month. So instead of $48,000, we brought in $319,000 the first year, $330,000 the second year. So that's what we knew, that there was a market. We wanted to expand it. This is the one outside of Atlanta, the one in the center there. And then a couple we're managing for people, because our success in doing this, people have come to us and say, hey, I've got a really nice house. Could you manage our house? So we're going to bring on maybe 5 more houses in the next maybe 3 or 4 months of these luxury homes that we're going to be managing for people. This one's on the Fox River outside of Chicago. This is that one here. I'll click on that. This is a very impressive house. They were going to do a TV series here. They had to cancel at the last minute. We've already had a music video shot there. So anyway, this is a beautiful home here. And that's one of our properties. And then we also have, let me see, we have one now that we're managing that's outside of Palm Springs. I think we just added to our site. It should be on here. So anyway, this is an example of pivoting for profits, because it was really out of the, here's the one in Palm Springs right here. It was really out of the necessity that, we weren't making the profits on the flips of a couple particular flips. That gave us the experience. And then now the fact that we can go in and dive in some of the best training possible, on short-term rentals is in the Renatus curriculum. So that enabled us, myself and my other two business partners, to go and dive deep into that. And again, that wasn't on my radar at first. It was like, okay, well, the classes go in. That's what I'm going to do, is luxury short-term rentals. No, it was pivoting for profits. It was having the knowledge base of a lot of different strategies. We look at it as tools in our tool belt, right? The more tools you have, the more options you have, and the less risky real estate is. If you can do multiple things, have multiple exit strategies that you can profit from, it just becomes less risky for you and the people that you're raising the capital for. So, those homes that I've showed you, all of those homes that we bought, these $1 million homes, none of my own money in any of those homes, right? Learning how to raise capital has allowed me to buy all of those homes with partners. And there's only 2 of those that I even put my own credit on. That's an example of one of the pivots. And then, of course, I'm also doing a condo development now.
So now, so you went from fix and flipping over to these pictures are amazing. Like, I want to go to this Palm Springs one right now. It just looks so nice. So luxury short-term rentals, which is huge, and it's big profits in this business. But now, learning real estate and learning all the different strategies. Now let's talk about a little bit about the condo development.
Yeah. And that was the same experience. In fact, maybe even more so. So I was flipping a lot of properties, and I'd raise capitals within a couple different LLCs. I think we had as many as 9 LLCs that were funded for flipping at the same time. And I got a property. It was on a online auction site, which I'd used before. And it was a pro basketball player, built his dream mansion maybe 20 years ago. On a golf course right across the street from Homewood Flossmoor High School in the Chicago southern suburbs. And that was on the market first for, like $1,900,000 over the years. It kept getting in worse and worse condition. Anyway, we picked up that property. We ended up buying that property with the idea that we were going to flip it, right? So we had limited access to it because it was an online auction and it was locked up. I was able to get into it before we actually bought the house. But getting into it and starting to do some of the rehab work, one thing led to another. I mean, there was, the basement had 8 feet, they're 9-foot basement ceilings, I think 9 or 10 feet. And it had like 8 feet of water, right? So we had a lot. It had an indoor swimming pool, and that had, the water had pushed that up from the ground with the pressure of the water in the ground. So it was just like repair after repair. So evaluating the property, see what is the best use of this property being on that golf course, and in the market, knowing that we probably couldn't sell a house for more than $1.5 million in that particular town, in that village. So we pivoted, we evaluated as a multi-unit building, first as a rental, then as a condo. And then where we've landed on after meeting with the village multiple times is we've got what we have approved is a 34-unit condo building. And again, we have commercial and land development classes that we offer. They weren't, though I went through already before this project. I think I probably went through both of them, but with the idea that I'm really not involved in this. So, kind of just going through general knowledge. But again, now this pivot could be very profitable. It's going to be about an $8.5 million project. 34 condos sold at, we'll sell those probably at 300,000 plus per, luxury condo. So let me just show you. So what I've done is I've worked with a securities company, someone that has their security license, and this is my domain name. So we're kind of, I own the domain. So I would love to have this site for our community where people are going here to put their own projects on there. I would advise someone, and this is not just, being selfish on my part. I really believe this. I would advise them to be an investor in my project first, so that they can get a feel from an investor standpoint, what kind of communications, how does, crowdfunding work. I'm going to provide videos for them so they can really help their business of promoting the education if they'd like to use it that way. And they can go through this for as little as $2,000 they can be a part of this project? Well, they just click on investment up at the top here, and then or invest up at the top. And this will have, you can see crowdedrealestate.com. This will have the offering. This is what's called an offering. So this has an offering that gives a rendering of what the building so far, with working with the architect, what the building is going to look like. It's going to have a clubhouse on the top level overlooking the golf course, just beautiful views. There'll be an open terrace, a clubhouse that they can rent and use. Then there's on the back of it, an open terrace, and that's going to face the golf course. So there's really nothing like that within probably a 15-mile radius from this house that you're going to have views around, the countryside like that. So anyway, they can go on this. Because of regulations or crowdfunding, I can't get into more details of the offering, but they can just go to crowdedrealestate.com, and that will they'll be able to see that. So that's another example of, again, I wouldn't even have this in my head probably if it wasn't exposure to these classes and the raising capital classes, the land development classes, the multi-unit building classes. All of those put together, and any one of those in isolation is valuable, but there's like the synergy of having all of those classes in your brain, right? All of those strategies kind of in a melting pot in your brain is just really powerful.
Thank you for that, Randy. You know what I was just thinking is just that I'm just watching how you're just evolving, right? And it's like you start with something, but then you like, well, I can do this better. I can get more efficient at this, and I know you're a giving person. You give up your time all the time, even being on here now, I know you had church today, and I'm just watching how you evolve from different strategies and that condo development. I think that's going to be beautiful for everybody that's involved in that. But it's like if you want to go far, right, you go with a group, and that's kind of like what the Juice Show is all about. Is just having, bringing other people up with us. It's not just a thing, I thing. It's like a we thing, and we can grow farther. If we had just had more people and everybody, make some money and build wealth in the process. So I just love to see that, and that's what just came to my mind. Just how you're able to pivot, at certain times in your real estate business to create more profit, and I just love it. It's amazing.
So if we got some questions in the chat, let's
Yes.
get through those questions for Randy.
Yes, we do. So Paris Mox, the person's question is, how can you appeal to a private individual to offer them 8% on their money to become an equity partner or investor in your project when they charge 10% to lend their money to other real estate investors?
Well, the key there obviously is you've got to show them that you're less risk than what the other investors are. I mean, the only reason for them to do it, unless they're your mother or, some family member and they want to be kind to you. But let's say it's just a third party. And I mean, put yourself in their position. I lend at 10 and now you're bringing me this opportunity at 8. Why would I do that? And the only answer that I can think of is that it's less risky than the one that's at 10, that you have maybe more experience, or you're partnering with a more experienced person, that the deal itself has more profit there, which will also make them feel more comfortable, right? So if it shows, well, after I pay you the 8%, there's going to be another $50,000 in profit. That's a lot of room for mistakes, and they're still going to get their 8%. If the other deal, if they're usually lending on a deal and maybe there's only, $20,000 in profit, they may think, oh man, if you have to redo a roof, have to replace the AC and furnace, maybe they're not going to have enough money to pay me all of my interest. So that would be the only thing that in my mind that would sway them to do that. But listen, if a deal's good at 8%, it should be good at 10%. Especially if you are built in enough profit. And if that, obviously if it's a gut rehab, the longer the rehab goes, the bigger that percent is. But, depending on how much you're borrowing, if you're borrowing it for, let's say it's a 90-day flip, even a half a year flip, I mean, you're talking 1% difference in what you're paying if it was a half a year, right? Full year would be 2% different. A half a year is 1%. If you're borrowing $200,000, that's $2,000. So I would ask you to, evaluate that deal, that if it's that tight on the profit that you can't pay somebody 10%, maybe it's not a deal to do. So I would consider that. And I've said this before, my first couple real estate deals where I was doing flips with private money lenders, believe it or not, and I'll give this some context, I did pay 24% interest. But that's because I had the deal under contract to buy. And before we even closed, I had it under contract to sell. So I had an exit strategy for like a month. So what was I paying? I was paying 2%, to get this deal done. And there was no prepayment penalty or anything like that. People say, oh my God, you agreed to 24%. Now, if you don't know what you're doing and you're hanging on to it for a year, well, that could be trouble. But again, the only reason I was able to do that willing to do that because I had the contract already to sell, and it's somebody I had been selling to previously. So, don't, look at how much that money's really spent, costing you. So look at the deal. But then again, also, if you want to negotiate, the only negotiating power you have is the security of the deal and your experience and knowledge and education.
Hey,
Sounds
Randy.
like you got to know how to run those numbers.
Yeah, most definitely. Randy, when I think of a fix and flip, I think of you first only because not only you mentioned this, I don't know if anyone caught this when he was saying it. Randy did not only do just one or two or even five. We're talking like 8 or 9 flips at one time. I can't even imagine doing one flip, and you're doing them like simultaneously at the same time, 9 flips. So I think of you because you obviously must like doing flips at the time to do that many. For anyone that's thinking about doing flips, or what are the characteristics that you have to be able to do flips? Because kudos to you doing that many at one time. What is one of the, at least, a few of the characteristics or factors of, you definitely need to know what you're doing on this, and this to even do one, let alone multiples at the same time.
Yeah, and really, whether it's one or multiples, I mean, the basics are the basics. And somebody mentioned it about analyzing the deal. I mean, you have to be so good at analyzing the deal, because it's never going to turn out good if you go into it already and it's not a good deal, right? So you've got to analyze the deal, and there has to be enough profit there. So the other thing is, I said a minimum amount of profit, a minimum dollar amount, and a minimum percent return on investment. So mine was 30%. I had to make at least 30% on their money, because if I raise capital through an equity partnership model, I'm giving the person that's putting in the money half of the profit. So I'm giving them 15% on their money, and I'm making 15% on their money. So analyzing that deal up front, that there's enough profit. And I would also have minimum profit of 30,000, even if it was small dollar amounts. It had to make at least 30,000, because again, if unexpected things come up, contractor problems, have to change a contractor in the middle of a project, you want to make sure there's enough profit there that it's not a negative, it's not loss on that. So whether it's one deal or it's 5 deals or 10 deals, whatever that you're doing it, that's important. And then really keeping an eye on that project with the contractors. And I think if I made mistakes, and on mine would be giving too much faith in the contractors. There's an expression that says you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. So inspecting that project throughout the phase, and that made it difficult with so many. That's why I'll probably never do that many ever again in my life. That was the most difficult one, and probably where I fell short on what I should have done, is be able to be at every one of those projects almost every single day. So hope that answered your question.
It does. It does. It just lets us know that when you go all in, you definitely go all in, whether it's fix and flip or short-term rentals or luxury. homes. And I want to be respectful of your time because we're getting closer to the hour. The people that want to be able to attend things that we just showed you, that's following up after this particular, podcast, you definitely want to get back to people that invited you so you can get that link and go ahead and attend. And also to be respectful of Randy's time. Randy is giving us his precious God time because normally he would be in church. So we thank you so much for being here. And I am so glad you were able to share this with us today. So I'm going to let the other ones speak, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I'm
And
gonna go for it.
if I don't get a chance to say this, I just want to tell your listeners, if you're thinking about getting involved in real estate, these guys are great to work with. I've gotten to know them over the years. Reliable, responsible, impressive professionals. So, hats off to them putting this together, and don't hesitate to work with these guys. I can't recommend them enough. I've been very impressed with them. They're young go-getters that they're going to do great things. I have no doubt.
Hey, thank you, Randy. We reciprocate that as well. We thank you for coming on and sharing with us your wealth of knowledge and your experience. We definitely want to hear about this land development situation that you got going on. So we will be inviting you back on. So appreciate your time, brother. Thank you so much. And if you didn't mention, this is your second time to the national conference, right?
Yeah.
Did you say that? It's your second time? All right, awesome. So we'll definitely see you in the house next week.
All right.
Thanks for coming out.
I'll see you there. All right. Great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for showing.
Absolutely. Go ahead, James.
So we're gonna end, but I want to leave the audience with something, right, Randy? So out of all your experience and everything that you learn, you realize that education and being around the right people, like a community, has a big effect on everything. Just what would you want the people to take away from today, before they leave out and go about their regular business?
Yeah, I would say the big thing goes back to that theme, pivoting for profits. It's not so much the profit part, it's the pivoting part. You can't pivot to something you don't know, right? So you need to know a lot of different strategies. If you're going to get involved in real estate, even if you say, I just want to do wholesaling, that's a mistake because that's actually more risky than learning a number of strategies. And the other thing is, what I always say is being a real estate investor is helping people. The more people you help, the more money you're going to make, the more problems you're going to solve. Okay. So you can't solve a lot of problems if you only know one thing. You only have one tool in your tool belt. So if you really want to help a lot of people, learn a lot of different strategies. Because if you try to get somebody to do one thing, that might not be in their best behalf, best benefit, but that's the only thing you know how to do, right? So give a wide variety of options. That's one of the reasons I recently became, few years ago, a real estate broker as well. So I'm also a broker. So I've got that tool in my tool belt because selling it conventionally on the MLS might be the best for some people that are having real estate problems. So I want to have as many solutions as possible. That means I can help more people.
Beautiful, wonderfully said. Wonderfully
Thank
said.
you.
So I want to thank, and I'm gonna pass over to Bobby. I want to thank you for jumping on. This was amazing. I got a notebook full of notes. I'm an avid listener. I like your story and I like what you're doing as far as community and getting to see you every week. Thank you for jumping on the podcast. This was great, and I just can't wait to see what else you have in store, and I can't wait to see the development of that condo. So thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. Thank you, guys. God
All
bless.
You've heard
right.
it. You've heard it from the educator. Get educated. Thank you, Randy.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to let you loose. Thank you for joining us here for another action-packed episode of The Juice Show. And like I like to say at the end, you have been juiced.